for the UFC. I have no doubt in my mind that 2025 is going to be insane when it comes to the UFC. So many big fights, so many number one contenders, so many up and comers. 2025 is going to be absolutely insane. I think 2024 turned out to be a pretty good year for the UFC. I felt like that middle part of 2024 was a little bit lackluster, especially when it comes to the pay per views. But, the year started off really strong with UFC 298, 299, UFC 300. And I think it ended pretty strong as well with 309, 308, 307. 310 was okay. But I think 2025 is going to be insane. Like, it's going to make 2024 look like a filler year for the UFC in comparison. And I have multiple reasons why. Number one, rightful title shots. In 2025, we're going to see rightful contenders, rightful title shots. We're not going to see Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley. We're going to see Makhachev versus Armin Saryukin 2, Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, Aspinall versus John Jones, Bilal Mohammed versus Shavkat Ramonov, Ilya Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski 2, and I think Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Kara France is also a really good title fight. I know a lot of people are not excited for Alexander Volkanovski getting the rematch against Ilya Topuria, but the reality is he deserves the rematch. He deserves the rematch for everything he's done in the featherweight division. Now, I understand stylistically where Volkanovski is at this point in his career, how easily I think Topuria beat him in that first fight. I mean, I understand why fans are not excited for that fight, but it's still a fight that needs to happen. Now, another big reason why I believe 2025 could potentially or will be the greatest year for the UFC is that we could potentially see multiple double champ fights in 2025. I mean, we have Alexander Pantoja, who has been dominating the flyweight division, could potentially move up to 135 to potentially face maybe Umar Nurmagomedov and Merab Dvalishvili. We have Ilya Topuria, who just beat the two greatest featherweights of all time in Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway, who could potentially move up to face Islam Makhachev. Now we have Islam Makhachev, who's been running through the lightweight division, beating guys like Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Alexander Volkanovski, who's about to fight Armin Saryukin. He could potentially move up this year to fight at 170 against potentially Shavkat if he beats Bilal. I don't see Islam Makhachev fighting Bilal Muhammad, but I mean that's that's a possibility right there. Alex Pereira potentially moving up to the heavyweight division to face the winner of John Jones versus Aspinall. That could potentially happen in 2025, and I really do believe that at least two of these fights are going to happen in 2025. I know a lot of people are opposed to double champ fights, but I think it makes the sport a lot more exciting, guys, because as fans, we always think about, fantasy fights, like who would win, Yair Rodriguez or Justin Gaethje, or I don't know, Robert Whittaker and Yuri Prohaska. I mean, I know that's a weird example, but we think about these, imaginary fights, and I feel like in 2025, we're going to see a lot of those fights, and the reason why I think 2025 is going to be an incredible year for the UFC is because we have so many incredible, skilled champions right now. I mean, we have guys like Alexander Pantoja running through the division. Merab Dvalishvili, even though he just recently became champion, I mean, he's been running through the bantamweight division. Has names like Jose Aldo, Henry Cejudo, Peter Yan, Sean O'Malley. I mean, Merab Dvalishvili is very, very close to becoming the bantamweight GOAT. Ilya Topuria looks absolutely sensational, undefeated. Just beat Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the same year. Like, Ilya Topuria is on track to be not only potentially the featherweight GOAT, but a GOAT of the sport. Islam Makhachev, also potentially the GOAT of the sport, just beat Charles Oliveira, beat Dustin Poirier, beat Alexander Volkanovski twice in his prime. Like, insane resume. Is going to fight Armin Saryukin. If he gets to Armin Saryukin, he could potentially also be the GOAT. I mean, he would be the GOAT of the lightweight division, but even talks of potential GOAT of the sport. Alex Pereira has been running through the light heavyweight division, beat guys like Yuri Prohaska, Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree, all in 1 year, has looked very impressive. A couple more wins, and we're talking about Alex Pereira as the GOAT of the sport. I mean, we have Dricus du Plessis, undefeated in the UFC. Is coming off beating Sean Strickland, Robert Whittaker, and Israel Adesanya, maybe some of the best middleweights ever. Incredible resume. I could go on and on and on about the current champions in the UFC, and that just tells you how exciting the sport is going to be next year. And we're gonna see a lot of these fighters tested. Not that they're not being tested, but we're gonna see different types of contenders. We're gonna see them potentially challenge themselves and move up a weight class, potentially even move down a weight class. Who knows? Maybe Alex Pereira wants to test his skills against Dricus du Plessis back at 185. So I think because of the champions that we currently have right now in the UFC, it's going to be so exciting in 2025. Like, I know a lot of people complain about the fact that we have a lot of grapplers as champions, which I don't really think that's true. I think all the fighters, I think the champions that we have right now, all of them are amazing. All of them are exciting. All of them have potential to be future GOATs. Like, none of the champions to me feel like frauds. None of them feel like, oh man, that guy's truly not the champion. Like, Merab Dvalishvili is truly the champion. Pantoja is truly the champion. Topuria is truly the champion. Makhachev is truly the champion. Bilal Muhammad is truly the champion. Dricus du Plessis is truly the champion. Alex Pereira is truly the champion. And I think Tom Aspinall is a champion. Tom Aspinall is a rightful champion. So because of those reasons, I just think 2025 is going to be absolutely incredible when it comes to main event pay-per-views, when it comes to title fights. And like I said, because of it, we're going to have potentially a lot of mega fights in 2025. I mean, Tom Aspinall versus John Jones could potentially be one of the biggest fights in the UFC, the fight that we went wanting, a fight that we didn't even think could happen. I mean, a year ago, we're like, man, hopefully John Jones stays long enough to fight Tom Aspinall, but we don't really think that's going to happen. Guys, it is going to happen in 2025. You should be incredibly excited to see that fight. We could potentially see Aspinall versus Pereira. If Aspinall beats John Jones in the middle of the year, Pereira could want to move up and challenge Tom Aspinall. Can you imagine the size of that fight? Pereira versus Aspinall, Pereira versus Jones. Those are mega fights, guys. Those are absolutely mega fights. Now think about this. Dricus du Plessis defeats Sean Strickland in the rematch. Du Plessis versus Hamza Chimaev, mega fight. That's a mega fight. Makhachev versus Topuria, mega fight. Makhachev versus Shafkat Ramonov, that's a mega fight. So there's so many big fights you can make. I mean, Pantoja versus Dvalishvili or Umar Nurmagomedov, I understand that, you know, to the casual viewer, that's not a big fight. But for us hardcore MMA fans, Umar versus Pantoja, huge fight. That's a huge fight in the division. And I could talk about fights that are not even title fight. We could potentially see Oliveira versus Holloway 2. We could see, you know, JDM versus Kamaru Usman, Peter Yan versus Sean O'Malley 2, Adesanya versus Imavov. I think it's a big fight. I mean, we could be seeing Dustin Poirier's retirement fight. So there's so many fights right now that are absolutely amazing. We have fun fights. Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. That could be an amazing fight. We have so many number one contender fights. We could see Movsar Evloev versus Diego Lopez, the rematch to see who gets that title shot against the winner of Topuria versus Volkanovski. Like, there's so many great fights. I feel like there's so many contenders. I mean, think about welterweight. We have Buckley. We have JDM. We have Ian Gary. We have Kamaru Usman. A lot of guys coming up. Carlos Prates. You know, there's a lot of guys. Middleweight as well. We got Imavov, Borajo, Anthony Hernandez. So many contenders right now in the UFC. And I truly do believe that 2025 is going to be the greatest year for the UFC we've ever seen. And notice how I haven't even mentioned Conor McGregor. Like, I truly do believe that the sport has moved on way past Conor McGregor. He's so irrelevant right now. And I feel like now with Michael Chandler losing to Charles Oliveira in the way he did, the idea of Conor McGregor returning to the UFC just becomes a lot less exciting, seeing how Chandler performed against Charles Oliveira. So I don't even think Conor returns in 2025. I don't even think the sport needs him. But man, guys, just think about the fights that I just mentioned. Du Plessis versus Chimaev. Oh, man, that fight is incredible. Aspinall versus Jones, beautiful. Pereira versus Ankalaev, an amazing fight. Peter Yan versus O'Malley 2 for 5 rounds. Oh, that first fight was perfection. There's so many great fights you can make in 2025. And I really do believe that they're going to deliver. Like, they're going to deliver unlike anything we've ever seen. And I mean, look at these first 2 cards. I mean, UFC 311 is absolutely phenomenal just to start off the year. UFC 312, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't too happy about Strickland getting that fight against Du Plessis, but the UFC promised them. And I do think that, I mean, if Strickland beats DDP, Strickland versus Chimaev, huge fight as well. So many great things coming for the UFC. You guys should be incredibly excited for what's to come. And I want to know why you guys or what you guys are most excited for the UFC in 2025. What's the fight that you truly want to see in 2025? For me, I feel like this is an easy one. Tom Aspinall and John Jones. That's the fight I really want to see. I think that's the fight that most fans want to see. But I mean, there's so many exciting champions right now. There's so many champions that have the potential to become GOATs, which I think is the main reason why 2025 is going to be the greatest year for the UFC.